Good morning. I would like to welcome you to the webcast this morning. I'm Todd Davis from the Division of Next Generation Professionals. I'm the Assistant Director, and today with me I have Christine Meisberger, who's a branch manager over the Teacher and Leader Effectiveness branch. We hope to help you address some of the common issues that we've seen through some of the work with the certified evaluation plans. Before we get started, I just want to remind you, if you've got any questions, please log on to Go Soapbox, and you can see that information down at the bottom. If you have any questions, feel free to log on there and post those, and we'll do what we can to answer those. Now I'll let Christine.
Thanks, Todd. So during the review process of the certified evaluation plans, we've been noticing some common practices of 50-50 committees relying too heavily on their current CEPs to draft their new CEPs. Unfortunately, as the graphic will show, this is approach likely to fit a square peg into a round hole. Some pieces fit well, such as sources of evidences, but there are some major components that need to be tweaked in order to meet the requirements of the regulation. So in today's webcast, we will address some common pitfalls that we're seeing in local certified evaluation plans so that your 50-50 committee can avoid them and the revisions that they require. So one common mistake is to use out-of-date language in the updated CEP. So while a change in terms and definitions appear to be minor, it's critical to the defensibility of the CEP. On the screen, you'll see that there are 4 measures highlighted and a performance rating. So the regulation states that the same 4 measures are to be used when evaluating teachers, other professionals, principals, and district certified administrators. So while the process is used to assign the 4 ratings to the measures is a district decision, specific terms have to be used to meet the requirements of that regulation. So the regulation defines a few things for you and leaves some things to your discretion. For example, you must use the performance criteria as they are provided for you. However, on the bottom row of the graphic that you see, you'll see that you also must determine the performance criteria for the district certified personnel and how those align to the 4 measures. So let's take a look at the performance criteria for teachers. It lists the Kentucky Framework for Teaching. For others, it's the Specialist Framework, and for the principal standards. All 4 of the domains line up to the performance measures of planning, environment, instruction, and professionalism. Now, please notice especially how the 6 principal standards are aligned to the 4 performance measures. And then finally, because some districts every district has unique roles on their district personnel teams, it has been left up to the 50-50 committee to decide the standards or the domains that will best exemplify the district certified personnel, and then it's also up to them to align those standards to the 4 performance measures. In the past, you may have used ISLIC or the principal standards or even PCEL. However, regardless of the standards that you're using, you must align them to the 4 measures, and they must be identified in your CEP. So next we want to take a look at how things were done, and this is where some of the common pitfalls start occurring. So you'll know that in the past we actually took ratings and applied those to each one of the 4 domains for teachers and other professionals. And then we assigned a rating to each of the 6 standards for principals, and then the district had their determined standards and they were rated based on the district determined method. But now in 2018, all roles are rated on the same 4 measures. So your CEP must identify the adequate, the required, and the optional sources of evidences that will be used to rate each of the 4 measures. So if the CEP says something like each domain will receive a rating or each standard will receive a rating, that language must be changed. It has to reflect 4 measures being combined to result in a summative rating. Anything to add there? Okay. So now we're looking at the summative process. When a district has the flexibility to determine the summative process, the regulation states that the evaluator must use the sources of evidence in combination with professional judgment to inform the rating for each of the 4 performance measures. So once the ratings for the measures have been determined, the evaluator then applies the district decision rules and then uses that to determine the summative rating. So while you're reviewing your CEP, ensure the terms like domain, standard, and measure are used appropriately. Let's walk through each one of these performance criteria to review that process.
So one thing to add there is one common thing that we see when it comes to the summative process is that districts are using the old language where it referred to professional practice as well as the overall performance category. And so it alludes to that there's a multiple step process to get to that summative rating. So just make sure you look through that language and make sure that it applies to what you actually want to include in your plan, and that you're utilizing it in the correct way.
Thanks, Todd. So we're going to take a look at the teachers and other professionals closely. You'll see that from the Kentucky Framework for Personnel, we've pulled out that teacher and other professional bar. So it's pretty clear to see how the 4 domains from the Kentucky Framework for Teaching and Specialist Framework align directly to the 4 measures. So the frameworks provide the performance criteria, and the 50-50 committee decides what particular evidences will be required. So then the sources of evidence exemplify those performance criteria and give the evaluator everything that they need to know to create a measure rating for each one of the 4 measures. Okay? But the common issues here is that in a CEP, we will see that the term domain is used instead of measure, and professional practice is used instead of the summative rating.
So again, just as a reminder, if you're wanting to use the same process that we've used in the past for the professional practice rating, just make sure that you address the language change that needs to be addressed. And so in order to do that, unless you've created your own table, you won't be able to copy and paste that in there, because it does refer to the domains as opposed to the individual measures.
That's right. That's right. This is really apparent in the principal section, because we see the 6 standards as they have been aligned to the 4 performance measures. Again, the principal standards and the evidence that the CEP, that the 50-50 committee decide upon, that provides the evidence and the information required to assign a rating to each one of the performance measures. So we're assessing 2 standards for planning, 2 standards for environment. But if you try to then take that matrix from PPGS and copy and paste it, it won't work, because it uses that wording that you mentioned before. It has to be revised so that it reflects the assignment of a rating to each one of the 4 performance measures, and then it ends in a summative rating.
Yeah, and ultimately that process was determined through 6 individual measures or ratings that you would provide based on the standards. And so now that we've moved to 4, that language no longer works.
So for district certified personnel, we have the most flexibility. The 50-50 committee members need to decide what performance criteria are going to work the best here. So a few questions your group may want to ask are, what have we used in the past, what will work now, and do they fit the role? Once you decide what standards work best in your district, you must align them to the 4 measures of the Framework for Personnel Evaluation. So then each measure receives a rating, and then they apply the district decision rules, and then you determine the summative rating. So because you're using the same 4 measures, Todd, could you talk a little bit about that process, the same 4 measures to evaluate all certified personnel?
So as required in the regulation, and we're using a statewide framework, we have to think of the framework a little bit differently than we have in the past, because that was ultimately the specialist framework and the framework for teaching. And so now the statewide framework is really just it's outlining what every individual the certified individual needs to be rated on. So because the process is the same, or the 4 measures are the same, I should say, it allows you, if you want to use the same decision rules across the board for all certified personnel. And so, again, there's flexibility in that. Districts have a choice, but because you do have those 4 same measures that you have to align to for each of the standards or the the components, then you can use the same process.
Great. And if you're looking for guidance, we actually have a document on our Certified Evaluation Planning webpage. It aligns the ISLIC standards to the principal standards, and it introduces the PCEL standards. So if you're looking for guidance in that, please feel free to use that. It is a suggestion only. It's a district discretion to choose which standards to use as performance criteria.
Yeah, and so the Principal Steering Committee, Principal Effectiveness Steering Committee, help align the principal standards. And so the ISLIC, the crosswalk, is guidance, and dependent upon the role, some of those may change, but it does show some examples of how you could align to the 4 measures based on whatever decisions or standards you choose to use.
So now we're going to get into some basic issues regarding frequent omissions or some confusion in particular areas. Regarding evaluator training, most districts include in their plan the initial certified evaluation training and testing provided by KDE or approved provider. But the distinction here is if your district is choosing to use observation as a source of evidence, you must define how your district will ensure that observers received that training necessary to conduct accurate observations in your plan. And as part of the personnel evaluation system training, it is appropriate to include that information in your 6 hours of ELA approved training that you conduct annually. But there is a distinction between evaluator training and the observer training. So the 2 requirements that need to be included in the evaluator training, if you're using observation, the training for observers focused on observation and conferencing techniques, and then if you're going to use additional trained administrators, how that will be used to observe, how they will use that information to observe and provide information to the evaluator. Yeah.
So just to dig in just a little bit deeper, we can look at this in 3 different components. First of all, if any person that is going to serve as an evaluator has to have that initial certified evaluation training. And so that's that 2-day training that we've had in the past that we'll be conducting throughout the year. So that applies to all evaluators, anyone who is evaluating any certified personnel. The observation is only applying to those who are observing for the purpose of evaluation, which are typically your principals and so forth, and system principals. So the district just needs to determine how that process is going to be done. Then the 6-hour update is done annually. The observer training can be used to help reach that requirement. However, if you're not an observer, it may not apply to you. So it just has to apply to evaluation or the evaluation system. So the district can do that in-house, or in the past, KASA has offered a one of the days that they do with the initial certified training. But then I'm sure there will be other options as we work through that process as well.
So observation being a part of that initial evaluator training.
Correct.
Okay. And the next little bit is a distinction that needs to be in the CEP. It is currently listed in your assurances, but you want to make sure you don't accidentally change the information within the Certified Evaluation Plan. You must review the CEP with all certified personnel below the level of superintendent within the first 30 calendar days. That's different than a month, and it is different than 30 days. So 30 calendar days is what's reflected in the regulation. That's critical that you include that in your Certified Evaluation Plan. And keep in mind, not everyone starts at the same time. You have many district certified personnel who begin in July. So that's 30 calendar days of them reporting for employment. Okay.
So one thing to add there is just make sure you address each individual one. So if you have teachers and other professionals broken out in separate sections of as opposed to the administrators, principals, assistant principals, and district personnel, that you address that 30 calendar day statement within each of those sections. So one thing that we see commonly done is that teachers have the language, but then it's missed.
It's not repeated
Yeah, it's
in the
missed
other
throughout
sections.
the rest of the others.
So, and at the conclusion of the evaluation cycle, the CEP must also ensure that the employee has an opportunity to include a written statement or response to their summative rating, and that will be included in their official personnel record. This is separate from the appeals process, so you just need to make sure that that's included within the body of the Certified Evaluation Plan. Most districts have solid appeals processes currently in place that have not changed over time, but this is a new addition to the body of the CEP that must be included. Also, we have an updated assurances document for you that will be posted on, or it is posted on the Certified Evaluation Planning webpage. We will also include it as an attachment of this webinar when we send it out to everyone. And as additional supports, we want to bring your attention that KDE is offering office hours. This is a chance for you to log on, have a discussion with other districts. It's usually a small group with KDE staff, and we're there to answer your questions and help troubleshoot particular issues you may be having. The current schedule is listed on your screen, but if you're interested in having us offer additional times, we're happy to schedule them. Please let us know. Please log on to KDE's Certified Evaluation Planning page, and you'll see the Skype link. That'll link you directly to every single one of these, and we will be on at that time having discussions with you. Please, as always, if you have any questions, reach out to Todd or myself. Our information is on the screen. Christine Meisberger at education.gov and Todd Davis at education.ky.gov.
So just as a reminder, our goal here is to help you not necessarily develop the plan that we think is the best, but to help you make sure that what you have in your plan meets the requirements of the regulation and the statute. So again, we're here to support you in any way. So if you need to send us components or the plan for review ahead of time, we're happy to
do so.
to try to work through those as quickly as possible, and help you get to a point to where hopefully no revisions are needed after your board has approved.
Right.
So,
yeah, great opportunity.
So can you review 3 big ideas at the end?
So the 3 big ideas that we discussed today were the terminology and the terminology use and the application of the old decision rules that were included.
The old professional practice decision rules matrix.
The inclusion of the district certified personnel, making sure that you assess that you determine those performance criteria and that you align those to the 4 measures. That's another biggie. Yep. And then finally the omissions that we mentioned at the end that are easily correctable. That you can find that language right in the WOW document.
Yeah, the bigger ones are the using the old decision rules, that matrix from professional practice for both teachers and principals, but then ensuring the other one is ensuring that all roles are aligned to the same 4 measures for those summative ratings. So,
that's it, yeah.
Yep, it looks like that's the last of our questions. So
Great.
Again, we'd like to thank you for taking a look at this webcast today, and hopefully can find it useful. Again, we're here to support you and do what we can to help you get to where you need to. So contact us. We'll do what we can. Thank you.